Hey guys, it's Holly. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're doing video number 2 of our mental health series, and today I'm going to be speaking about insomnia. And so I wanted to add insomnia into the mental health series because I feel like more often than not, insomnia is more of a psychological problem. It can definitely be physical as well. There are certain medical conditions that can cause insomnia. And there are certain things that can cause insomnia, such as too much blue light at night, things of that nature, certain foods you're eating, excessive caffeine consumption. So it can be physical, but from my personal experience, and more often than not, what I've seen is it's usually a more psychological issue. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm kind of going to start from the beginning of my life, when I remember struggling with insomnia, and I'm kind of going to go up down the timeline. So that way you can kind of get an idea of just how much insomnia has been a struggle over the years for me. So one of my first memories is being about 2 years old. So I specifically remember having insomnia at the age of 2. Like, I was that young when I started having trouble sleeping. And when I was a kid, when I was younger, if I couldn't sleep, it was usually largely due to excitement. Being excited about something that was happening the next day. Maybe we were going on vacation. Maybe we were going to do something really fun with the family. So when I was little, it was more of kind of that situation. If nothing really exciting was going on, I would usually sleep fine. But then when I got to be about the age of 8 or 9, I might have even been 6 or 7, I started having trouble sleeping because I didn't want to be alone. I was constantly afraid there were snakes under my bed, and things as a kid, it's pretty normal to feel like that. So my oldest brother, would sleep in the room with me until I fell asleep, and then he would go to his room. Sometimes he would end up falling asleep and being in my room the whole night, and he would sleep on the floor. He was such a good brother. But anyways, so that was kind of like my childhood. And as a child, it wasn't like a super crazy problem. It wasn't enough that it was like a huge deal, but it was definitely something that would happen. So the older I got, the worse it got. Throughout most of my school years, I was pretty much fine. When I got to high school, I did start to have a little bit of trouble, but it wasn't super bad, kind of like before in my younger days. So the more I progressed through high school, I got to probably my sophomore year, and I started having a lot of trouble sleeping at night. And so I would sleep about 4 to 5 hours at night. I would go to school all day, and then I would come home and I would take a nap because I was really tired. So I would sleep for another 2 or 3 hours, sometimes even like 4, and then I would wake up. So in my older teenage years, I slept quite a bit. And so this went on for probably about a year. That would go on. I was doing kind of like what they call polyphasic sleep, which is where you're sleeping a few hours and, at a time, and then you'll sleep a few hours later in the day. So that's actually a pretty common thing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've known a lot of people that have done that polyphasic sleep, and when I got older as well, I had a very physical job when I was about 21, 22 years old, and I was doing about 8 to 10 massages every single day, and I had really bad insomnia at night, so I would sleep about 2 to 4 hours, and then I would come home from work and I would sleep another about 3 hours, give or take. So it's not the most ideal situation for most people, but if it's the only way you can get your rest, then that's totally fine. So like I say, the older I got, the worse it got. By the time I was 19, I was working my first job as a massage therapist at this point in time. That's when I really started to notice, like, hey, I've got really bad insomnia. And from that point, it just started getting worse. And I noticed that it coincided with a lot of anxiety, and it was really hard for me. It was not an easy thing at all. So, a lot of nights I would only sleep 3 or 4 hours, and then I guess within the following year or two to come, it kept getting worse. And so I would have nights occasionally where I didn't sleep at all, or I would sleep only about 1 hour, an hour and a half, and then it was really hard on me because I would have to go all day, and basically I would just be running on adrenaline. And that's really difficult. It can cause a lot of anxiety, especially when you already have anxiety. And I've always noticed for me, if I'm really sleep deprived, like if I've had, less than 4 hours or something like that of sleep, I will tend to have a lot more anxiety, and that's totally normal. And so ultimately, I experimented with all kinds of different treatments over the years. I mean, first, I tried a lot of over-the-counter medications because I didn't really, I hadn't done my research and I didn't know a whole lot about this stuff. So I tried over-the-counter medications. Sometimes they would work, sometimes they wouldn't, still to this day. Some nights I still take them. Some nights they help, some nights they don't. Then I started to experiment with more natural treatments. So things I would order online, natural sleep aids and stuff like that. So more often than not, those would really not do hardly anything at all for me. So the insomnia continued to go on, and for me, it's always been kind of something that will generally come and go in phases. So I'll be fine for days or weeks at a time, and I'll sleep fine. And then it will go into a cycle of days or weeks at a time when I will really struggle. So it's very hit and miss. And about the time I hit 23 or 24, I was still having quite a bit of an issue, but it had gotten a little bit better. And then I had my first child at 24. So I was pregnant with him at 23 and I had him at 24. And then after he was born, still crazy insomnia. I slept really good for the first few weeks while recovering, and then after I'd gone back to work and everything, started having trouble again within several months afterward. So I've seen doctors for this before. There were about 2 or 3 different occasions I would go to the doctor and tell them, hey, I'm having trouble sleeping. Can you help me with anything? So the first medication I was given, I believe I was about 22 years old. And they gave me a medication called, what is it called? It's something that they give women when they're pregnant for nausea. Phenagrin. And Phenagrin. I can't remember the generic name for that. So they gave me that, and I was kind of like, I don't think this is going to work, but I'll try it. So I tried it, and it really didn't work at all. And as a matter of fact, it actually made me feel really, really weird. It made me feel like I was almost out of body, and I didn't like that at all. So again, about a year later, I went back, got another medication, and I don't recall what this one was either. So it didn't work either. So ultimately, I tried about 3 different prescription medications. Nothing worked. And so then I thought about, something really, really strong, like maybe asking for some Ambien or some Lunesta. I've heard that those are really effective, right? Well, so ultimately I decided not to go with anything super strong because there are so many reports of people sleepwalking, sleep driving, doing crazy things in their sleep. And of course I didn't want that. And so I did try Ambien a couple of times when I had a really close friend that I was working with, and she was prescribed Ambien. And so she asked me if I'd like to try it. So I did, and at this time I was about 23, 22, I can't recall. So anyways, it doesn't matter what age I was, but I did try it a couple of times and it did work, but it made me feel like I was completely dead. And of course, you never really want to take someone else's prescription medication, obviously, but I was younger, and back then, when the younger you are, generally the more risk-taking you are. But I took, I think it was just half of one. It was a really small dose. But yeah, so I took it, and, I did sleep, but I felt really, really strange, and I did not want that again. And so there have been a lot of reports of all kinds of adverse effects. So in the end, after all the struggle I went through, I ultimately came to decide that, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to ultimately just not take anything. And if I do take something, it's going to be natural or over the counter, herbs, teas, whatever. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So that's just the way I'm going to do it. And ever since then, that's what I've done. Now, I did notice in my younger days, whenever I was still on and off of anxiety medication, which I would take low dose SSRIs on and off throughout my teenage years and my early 20s. And I have been completely medication free now for 7 to 8 years. And I've mentioned that in a couple of my other videos. However, I noticed when I was on the low dose SSRIs that I would typically sleep a lot better and I wouldn't have so much of the insomnia issues. So, but in the long run, it still wasn't worth it when I weighed the opportunity cost of taking that medication because it was causing a lot of other unpleasant side effects. So the bottom line is everybody is different. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And honestly, with any health problem, with any mental health problem, it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. So yes, you can take the medication. I don't judge people for taking the medication. If you need it, you need it, and that's okay. I'm a fan of approaching every ailment from a psychological standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a Western medicine standpoint to an Eastern medicine standpoint. And I feel like we need to approach it from all areas and all levels because that's the only way that you can heal. You can't heal if you're saying, okay, here's some pills, take this, you'll be fine. Because ultimately, it's going to do you more harm than good in the long run. Now, short term, that's another story. If you're going through a particularly stressful part of your life and you just literally can't function, like, yeah, it's okay to take that. And I think the important thing is to remember, at the end of the day, you just have to do the best that you can. So, kind of to recap my timeline, I've basically struggled with insomnia ever since I can remember, since I was a tiny little child. And it's been on and off. And I do feel fortunate. There are a lot of people that have it worse than I do. But I've only known like one other person personally that has had it worse than me. And she takes Ambien now, and that's the only way that she can get sleep. There are some people out there like that, and she would actually go 3 or 4 days without sleeping at all at one time, not even a wink. And so that is definitely more severe than what I have dealt with over the years. So you have to weigh the opportunity cost of, how much are you suffering physically from the lack of sleep, because everybody's different. Some people can handle a lack of sleep better than others. And over the years, I've grown very accustomed to that. And so it just depends on you. It depends on what your schedule is like. If you are able to kind of do things on your own time and take your time with your bedtime routine. So as far as remedies that I would recommend for insomnia and things I would recommend you do, all medication aside, like I say, if you want to do that, that's on you. I don't judge. And I think if that's what you need to do, then I am all for you. But as far as things that you can do to help yourself sleep, the first thing is just simply going to be like your sleep hygiene. So having a routine when you go to bed, keeping it a routine. The experts say to always go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time. That's true to an extent, but the most important thing is just keeping it a routine. If you're an hour off here and there, or even like a couple of hours off, in my opinion, I don't think it makes a huge difference, but it can for some people. So, like I say, no one size fits all approach. Now, sleep hygiene, having a routine, getting off your phone at night at least 20 or 30 minutes before bed, if not more like an hour. So there are all kinds of experts that have all these different things that they would recommend that you do. And, I've done so much research over the years because I've struggled so much with this. And there are so many things you can do. And I recommend essential oils, having a diffuser, using salt lamps, using types of, candles, anything you can do before bed that's going to be relaxing to you and even throughout the day. Because if you're super stressed out and you're running on adrenaline and you're constantly in a fight or flight survival mode, you're going to have trouble sleeping. And that's a big thing that I've struggled with over the years is I've just been so much about survival that I've had a lot of really unfortunate things happen to me in my life, especially in my early adulthood. And so being in a constant state of survival it's a very difficult thing, and it definitely wears on you. And just try to maximize the sleep that you do get, because if you're only getting, like, say you're only getting 4 hours of sleep, maybe 5, everybody's different. I know a lot of people will say that if they get 5 hours of sleep, they can just hardly function. It's just not enough. Some people say, oh, I've got to have 8 or 9 or 10. It's just so different for everyone. For me personally, I only need about 6 hours to function pretty optimally. I try to get 7 if I can, but I also know for me, if I sleep 8, sometimes 7.5 or even 8, which happens very rarely, but if I do sleep that much, I actually don't feel well. I feel really strange, almost like not in my own body type of thing. It's very weird. But like I say, it's different for everybody. Not everybody requires the same amount of sleep. So I don't even remember where I was going with that. But yeah, maximizing the sleep that you are getting. So chances are, if you're only sleeping a few hours, you're probably sleeping pretty deeply during that time. So doing everything you can, using essential oils, having a good bedtime routine, making sure that your bed is comfortable, your bedding, making sure everything is clean, making sure you're comfortable on your mattress, your pillow. You might need to experiment with different types of bedding and things of that nature. I know some people are really a big fan of the memory foam, but then the thing about memory foam is it can also make you hot and sweaty, so you got to check your temperature, make sure that your temperature is ideal for sleeping. And I do all of these things before bed, and I feel like you just have to do the best you can, like I've said before so many times. And so you can also take all kinds of supplements, do different teas. Normally what I will do before bed is I will do like a nighttime, like a bedtime tea, and then I will usually take a nighttime supplement. Like, I don't like to do a whole lot of melatonin, because if you do that consistently over too much time, it can make you dependent and make it to where your body can't produce as much of its own melatonin, so you don't want to take melatonin really long term. But melatonin has a lot of other benefits, which I will go into more in the future. But for the sake of this video, I recommend doing something like a supplement that has all natural ingredients, like lavender, chamomile. There are a lot of other things you can try as well, like glycine, things like, I'm trying to think of another one, kava. But of course you'll want to talk to your doctor, and especially if you're on any other kind of medications. You guys always keep in mind, I'm not a doctor. People joke around and they'll call me like Dr. Holly, but but yeah, just I don't have any special licenses or degrees or anything like that. I just speak from my own experience, and I do my research, and I'm very self-taught on a lot of this stuff primarily. So yeah, I will take a supplement, and usually about 30 minutes or an hour before bed. Sometimes I'll even take 2 to help me if I really need to get a good night's sleep. So, and no matter what I do, there are definitely many nights that I still don't sleep well. There are definitely many nights that I lay there for an hour, 2 hours, sometimes even 3. So it really just depends on the night. It depends on what I'm going through. Am I really stressed out? Am I depressed? If I'm really depressed, I can't sleep. I know it's weird. It's quite the opposite of most people that struggle with depression. But if I'm really upset, depressed, I'm just a type of person, I'm thinking too much about it, I'm upset, literally cannot sleep. So, and then of course in turn that can make the problem worse. So however, I do notice that if I have a night that I haven't slept well, and I say I've slept good every other night for a while, and then suddenly I have a night where I slept 3 or 4 hours, or about half of what I normally would sleep or whatever, I notice I actually feel about the same, if not better. And I think the reason for this is there have been many studies that have been done on sleep deprivation and depression. And so studies have shown certain levels of sleep deprivation periodically can actually improve depression, because it does something in the brain. It's very interesting. So we'll talk more about that later. And I'm not suggesting that you go and like stay up all night, or stay up half the night, and then, because everybody is different, your body may not react well to that. So when I was younger, I had a much harder time dealing with sleep deprivation following my insomnia. The older I got, the easier it got. So it's made me a much stronger person, because I understand that there are so many things, it could be so much worse. And so I recommend just doing the best that you can, medication or no medication. So I know there are a lot of other people out there, insomniacs, fellow insomniacs. Hi, I'm with you. I feel you. I'm sending good energy. So what else? Having points of relaxation throughout the day. Meditation. I do a very short daily meditation practice, 5 minutes. That's it. That's all I have time for. Doing things like just being present in the moment. You can use incense. You can do smudging. I do a lot of that, even on a daily basis. All kinds of things that will help contribute to keeping you in a more relaxed state. which is ultimately the best thing for dealing with insomnia. So blue light's a big thing. I use blue light blockers at night after the sun goes down. I don't use them every night, but I should. I will use the blue light sunglasses, just regular, like, non-prescription blue light blockers, and so those will help. The lighting in your home is a big deal. If you have compact fluorescent bulbs, it's going to be a problem. If you have LED bulbs, especially the bright white ones, not so much the decorative, but those are going to be a big deal. The worst possible light bulb that you can use is the curly little white CFLs. Those are the very worst bulbs that you can use. So I do have a couple of those. I don't use them currently, but they are like vitamin D bulbs, so they're like special light bulbs, so I will use those sometimes. But the normal CFLs that are like energy conserving, those are actually really bad for your health, and they can also cause other things, like they can trigger epilepsy, seizures, headaches, migraines, and cause massive sleeping issues, and studies have even shown they can cause anger episodes, etc. The list goes on. So be mindful of your light. Try switching over to incandescents. Think about your office, think about your car, think about all the places that you are. Using air purifiers, taking care of your health, proper supplementation, and the things I always talk about. Exercise daily, no matter what. Even if all you can fit in is a 10-minute walk around the block, do it. Whatever you have to do. So with that being said, that's really about all I have to say on the insomnia video today. And there's so much more. It's kind of like the video I did on the anxiety. It's like there's just so much. The list goes on, and I could go on forever about it. But at the end of the day, that's about all I have to say for now when it comes to insomnia on the mental health series, video number 2. We will be doing another video on anxiety, insomnia, and panic disorder, and in the near future. So stay tuned for that. And if you are a person that's dealing with insomnia, or you know someone that is, you can try so many different methods. Some people will go to counseling for it. Some people will even do sleep studies. I have not done that. But if you can manage it naturally, I highly recommend that you do so. If you can manage it on your own without having to seek medical help, I highly recommend that you do so. And seeking out medical help, there's no shame in that. But I just know what I've been through is I was never able to find a good solution for me from a Western medicine standpoint. And the truth is, most people that deal with insomnia, it's a chronic, lifelong thing that comes and goes. And it's like anxiety. It's a lot like anxiety. It really is. I feel like the two are so correlated. So this is just my opinion, my expertise on what I've been through, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.